Hello, everyone. Welcome to this exclusive LinkedIn live session on breaking cliches, how women leaders are driving change and innovation, presented by Economic Times ETHRWorld Women Trailblazers, a celebration of International Women's Day. My name is Saumya, and I'm going to be your host and moderator for this session. And I'm really glad and excited to welcome you all to this fascinating conversation. Before we jump into the discussion and take away some solid takeaways, allow me to introduce our esteemed panelists, or if I may say, the esteemed duo. Welcoming on screen Jaya Vaidhyanathan, CEO, BCT Digital. Her portfolio of skills includes driving product strategy in the digital transformation space, product innovation, risk management, technology delivery, and execution. She serves as the independent director on the board of UTI Asset Management Company and IndiGrid. Jaya also serves as the CSR chair at BCT. She's a three-time winner of the prestigious Stevie Award. Recently, she was voted CEO of the Year by World HRD Congress, recognized by Fortune magazine as an inspiring woman of India, and she won the Tech Leadership Award at FinTech Futures Banking Tech Awards UK. She was also voted India's most trusted CEO in 2020 by World Consulting and Research Corporation and is the winner of Data Bird Female Executive of the Year. So welcome, Jaya.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. And yes, now moving to our next speaker, Aishwarya Kalakata, Director, Flipkart Ventures. Aishwarya is currently part of the Flipkart Ventures team and runs the tech startup accelerator Flipkart Leap. She was the director of product innovation at Flipkart. She's also led multiple internal innovation initiatives for Flipkart, like Project 1K. Her focus is on collaborating with external and internal innovators to adopt the latest technologies at her organization. Prior to Flipkart, she's worked across multiple industries in roles ranging from sales, marketing, supply chain to process consulting and managing global transformational projects. So thank you so much for joining us today, Aishwarya.
Thank you, Saumya. Thanks for having me over.
Great. And I'm super excited, as you can see. So without any further ado, let's begin with the discussion. And I always love to open my conversations with our panel. So it's not going to be like one-on-one, but it's going to be, I would want to capture the essence from both of my leaders today. And what better way to start with Jaya on this one? So Jaya, what was your inspiration to venture into this field? And what are the key challenges, if you could just say like top two challenges and inspirations that you faced while moving up the ladder?
I would probably say, since you're asking what's your inspiration in your current role, I would start with that. I've done different things in my past. I started off my career as an investment banker, moved into management consulting, moved into core tech, went back to banking, and then decided to be an entrepreneur. So I love learning. I love getting out of my comfort zone and doing new things. And I think what inspires me most is the process of continuous learning. So if you ask what were the two things that really made me do what I do today, which is being an entrepreneur and developing products that are much needed in India, for India, and that is an inspiration. It's more comes from giving back to India, which was the home country that I was born in. And it's more about what are those macroeconomic issues that we continue to import products from outside India, and they may not be the best fit, but we continue to import products from rest of the world for issues plaguing India, especially on the economic system. So my inspiration was to look inwards and say what ails India, what are the products that won't be a great fit for India, and therefore we must stop importing those products, and then looking at building it in India for India, and then taking it outside the globe with a mindset of reverse innovation and making it big. And we started about 7 years ago, and I think it was more in terms of, I would say, if I may, a runaway success in India, and then it's made its mark in over 20 countries in the world. It's a risk and compliance-based solution, and that's what I aim to do.
That's amazing. That's amazing, Jaya. Thank you so much. And are there like two challenges also that you would want to highlight?
Yeah, it's hard when you want to be an entrepreneur or you're saying I'm going to fix something that needs fixing, because when you come from large corporates, you're used to a lot of support systems that are in place with a corporate that goes without saying. And you're not just selling what you're trying to do, it's more you're selling the brand that's already been established. Yeah. Whereas when you're an entrepreneur, all you have is a dream. And like Martin Luther King, you go around saying, I have a dream, and the dream is to change the world. Yeah. And the dream has to be powerful enough that people are inspired to follow, leave their well-paying jobs and their paychecks, and want to follow that dream to make something big. So recruitment by itself is a challenge. The second challenge is how you challenge yourself coming out of a comfort zone of taking a lot of things for granted and become that person that gets to the whiteboard and drafts new things and just hopes things work. So recruitment is a challenge, and the second is a challenge is all about yourself, getting out of your comfort zone and actually learning all those little things that you took for granted. Because when you're with a larger corporate, when you say, I need tech support or I need this product for, even if you're doing innovation, there will be so many support arms that come and hold you and say, here is the tech team that's going to deliver the vision. Or you can say, I want, $50,000 ATM that does everything in a bank, and here's my vision, I want this. And there are multiple teams that are saying, here's the tech support, here's the product support. And you go build that, and then there's internal adoption. So that's how it happens in a bank. Whereas when you're an entrepreneur and you're saying, I'm going to build this, the product needs to have that capability of scaling, crossing the initial chasm, so to speak, and then people all coming together and making that a success, because the risks are much higher when you're starting out on your own. You're learning all those little things. You're learning how tech works. You're learning how, why you can't code something. You have to learn which technology is applicable. You need to make sure that this works versus something else. So there's a lot of continuous learning, and that's why it's an exciting job.
Absolutely. That is exciting. Thank you so much for that, Jaya. That was very inspirational. And Aishwarya, I'm coming to you now. So what have been your set of challenges as well as those inspirational anecdotes?
Yeah, indeed inspirational, Jaya. Thank you for sharing that. It's good to hear your journey, and a lot of things I echoed with, as well as wanting the same things, choosing some of those, making some of those same decisions myself. So in my career, I have done lots of different kinds of roles in very many different industries, all the way from, sales, marketing, supply chain. And I've had a startup of my own for a while, which was very exciting because you have to learn everything from the scratch, right? At Flipkart itself, I've had multiple roles. Currently, I'm part of the ventures team, and I also run the tech startup accelerator, Flipkart Leap. For me, the journey from where I started to where I am today has been a rather long and meandering one. My objective has, and what's inspired me has always been to get exposed to as many different aspects of running a business as possible, not be stuck doing that one thing and doing it over and over again, but learning new things every day. I need new challenges and new learning opportunities every couple of years. I've changed what I do very drastically every couple of years, made moves that people won't expect somebody in my position to do. And I've been fortunate to have worked with companies and managers who not just encouraged that, but also provided me with avenues to explore that. The things that I do at Flipkart today are examples of that. What we do at Flipkart Leap, working with upcoming startups to help them grow, scale, and navigate all kinds of challenges and contribute to this growing startup ecosystem in India, has been a very immensely satisfying journey. And to set that up from start at an organization like Flipkart in itself has been a very inspiring journey. So for me, what inspires me is doing new things, doing things that create impact for others, that change how, for example, consumers are going to shop tomorrow, change how Flipkart as an organization works in a couple of years from now, creating impact and doing meaningful roles is very important and inspirational to me. The key challenge has been that I have chosen breadth over depth. When you change a team or your focus ever so often, you learn a lot and you bring a very different perspective to the table, which is not common. But then in a traditional world, when you get considered for positions, you are always weighed against someone who's been in the field for a number of years. That's one of the trade-offs that I have chosen to make in my career. It's that challenge notwithstanding, I think I've worked on some amazing projects and amazing teams. The current role being one, and all of these I've landed because of my varied experience, where I get to bring that to the fore and capitalize on that.
Thank you for that, Aishwarya, and I'm sure our audience is absolutely loving that. Like Jaya said, it is about continuous learning. It is about, stepping up from your comfort zone. I think these are such beautiful things, such basic, but so important that we keep forgetting. And like Aishwarya just highlighted, that doing new things that have an impact. And trust me, while I'm writing it down, my new and impact is in caps, all caps. And, just choosing breadth over depth. That is such a beautiful thought. So thank you for, highlighting that. I'm going to go a little more deeper on this conversation. And Jaya, I'm coming to you on this one now. What are some of the opportunities that the empowerment and strengthening of women as entrepreneurs and leaders entail? And, if you could just share some informal steps that can help organizations motivate and develop female leaders, that's going to be really helpful.
So I'll take it as two different things. One is entrepreneurs and second is corporates with women leaders. They're completely different things, right? Because in entrepreneurial venture, you get to do what you want, right? Whether it is recruit women or, have a team, or kind of say this is going towards women-based products, or I'm going to do something for women. The biggest thing about being an entrepreneur is your ability to choose the direction of where you want to go. So that by itself means empowerment to me, which is basically the freedom to make that choice. Whatever that be, whether it's gender-based, whether it's diversity of different sorts, the kind of market or the kind of product detail you want to create, that is something you have a complete freedom of choice, which is nothing but empowerment, right? And in a corporate, there are different things that must be done, which is more data-driven, which is more factual, analytics-based work, which is something that I would strongly suggest. Because in that noise around, we are recruiting more women, I think diversity is improved. There are a lot of statements that we make, but still it's not an ecosystem where you're 50% women. So we recruit a lot of women, and after you cross the middle age kind of blues, right? That's when they drop off. Post that, the women in the system grow to senior leadership roles. So I think the challenge is in that mid-management layer, when there is a need to look at statistics and look at a data-driven approach. Consciously, organizations, especially larger the corporate, needs to look at data points and track every percentage movement, because without that active involvement, we are never going to get to the representation that the corporate truly deserves. I'll flip, because you kind of, when you introduced me, you spoke a little bit about board roles as well. I think that that's one of the representation needs to start all the way from the top. I've kind of been part of public boards both in India, in Europe, and in the US, and the biggest learning is that all boards across countries are not the same. So the representation of women is driven by charters in certain countries. And without naming the country, I've been on a board of a particular country where it was all women. And they said, we need diversity. Let's bring a man. So I think when it's left open that way, women make it all the way to the top. I'm not even saying gender representation, I'm saying gender neutrality. So it's more about actively looking at data points and getting to that level. And in India, we have a very long way to go. Because when the Kotak report was done, it started with a recommendation of at least a woman director on board. And then what happened, a lot of corporates nominated from, co-founders or wives of promoters. And it was more representation from the family, which was tokenism, rather than looking at it as we are missing a key piece of the puzzle where women bring a very diverse perspective to the board and therefore to the product base and therefore to what is the reflection grounds up. So I think that as long as you say that I'm missing 50% of the population is something that needs to be data driven. So I'm leaving with that keyword because I do want to hear Aishwarya's and other views as well. And I can come back to more on this unconscious bias, a key theme.
Absolutely. And that's so good. Thank you so much, Jaya. You really did give us a very, very broad perspective as to how things work in India and how differently they're outside and where we are still lagging. I think that's very, very important to know and be aware of. So thank you so much for that. Aishwarya, I'm coming to you now. Of late, I believe that women participation in new age tech and innovation roles have witnessed an increase. And you're pretty much, an epitome for that one. So what do you see as the key driving force here? And I have kind of tried to, structure this question in a couple of segments. So firstly, of course, we would love to know about the driving force. Secondly, we would love to know about that what are those challenges that are unique to women in this area? And I think that is something that our audience will surely resonate with. And thirdly, of course, a corrective action where how can things be made better for future female leaders, innovators? So it's going to be a very comprehensive part that we're looking at.
Sure. No, you're right. There's been a significant movement over the past few years, but then there is definitely room for more growth. I won't say that we are there yet when it comes to diversity in all kinds of technology roles. There is still a long, long way for us to go. Gender bias, especially in STEM, right? It's been so widely talked about and researched now, and that skew can be attributed to multiple factors. But at the root of it, if you leave aside the things that we do for tokenism, like Jaya said, it also starts from a lack of acknowledgement that this lack of diversity is an actual issue. It isn't there entirely. There's a pipeline problem. There's a lack of role models in numbers. You can count on your fingers the number of women role models that you would have out there that you've personally interacted with, and fewer women in general opting in for tech roles. Specifically for innovation roles, I think there is an encouraging trend. It's also because innovation, I think there's an acknowledgement that diversity fuels innovation. So at the core of it, there is that factor. There is an upward trend of women in leading innovation roles across organizations, as well as the number of women founders is now increasing. I think there's fundamentally underlying factor contributing to this, right? These roles are being seen increasingly as collaborator roles. When you are in an innovation role in an organization, where the social sensitivity that women bring to the table are a massive asset, and they do exceedingly well there. A lot of studies that are done, a recent study of R&D teams at more than 4,000 companies, they found that gender diversity generates dynamics that then lend themselves to radical innovation, resulting in the emergence of completely new markets for businesses. And I think the part that women play here is not small, and that's starting to get recognized. But like I said, it is still a slow journey. We are not there yet. This is few and far in between, and we need to intervene at multiple places, right? Jaya took the example of mid-management. Similarly, there is a drop-off that happens, and there's a different kind of problem that women encounter at different stages of their careers. And I think organizations need to put in place practices and programs that address all of this. For example, at Flipkart, we have programs like Flipkart Runway and Girls Wanna Code, which specifically works with women in engineering colleges in tier 2+ cities, where there is an offer of mentorship, where there is an effort made to make better women coders at the end of the day, because you really have to start there. You cannot suddenly one day ask a question why there aren't enough women on the board. You have to really take care of the entire pipeline. That's one. And once you get women into the workforce, how are you really supporting the different needs that they have? And this is where policy plays an important role. It's almost hygiene, in my opinion. Things we do like proper parental leave, like period leave, like childcare facilities at the organization, sabbaticals. All of these are equally important, because that's when you give the flexibility and the right balance for different kinds of people to perform in the organization, and you are removing barriers not just as a token to satisfy certain metrics, but to actually enable the people and level the playing field once they come into the organization. So I think a lot more proactive effort on the part of organizations, looked at through a lens of inclusion, supporting people across their journey. If a lot of people do this, then we're bound to see a more diverse representation in leadership, because a lot more diverse workforce then starts climbing up the ladder together.
And yes, Saumya, if I may add, you asked an attribute that we should probably look at more in terms of women. Yeah, some of the things we could do, and the fundamental answer is women supporting women. I think that is something that networking is done really well, and it has always been, a forte of men, where you catch up outside a meeting, go to a bar, you have discussions, and you become best friends, even if you disagree in the meeting, and then that's a completely different take. I think that just like we agree, women are great collaborators, and Aishwarya spoke about it. Women are great at social sensitivity. They're very good with empathy, but at the same time, we also need to acknowledge that we are not the greatest networkers outside of work. And when you talk about innovation, it's not just about just a great idea. It's more about how that idea gets converted and bought, and what is the next step for that idea to look at wide-scale adoption, and how do you take it from there, which means you're not just a technologist, you're not a great thought leader, only a great thought leader. You are a great business person, and you're also looking at how do you kind of, like she's from Flipkart, how do you flip that into making it a large-scale innovation and make it larger, and it's a scale up across countries. It needs a completely different mindset, and you can't do that with networking, without networking. So you need to have that ability to network, and we need to have a lot more of women supporting women, especially from a mentorship angle, especially because there are few role models. Absolutely. And the role models that are there, and the ones that have made it on the entrepreneurial journey, it's time to lend that hand and say that, ask me questions, I'm there for support, and it's mentorship in its truest form. I think that's something we need to do a lot more of.
Absolutely. I mean, thank you for that, Jaya and Aishwarya. I think I couldn't agree more. And it is something that is like pretty much like the meat of the hour, because we read about it, we like it on LinkedIn and kind of on Twitter, but do we really take it to our real lives? Do we support each other? And that mentorship element that you mentioned is so important. So thank you so much. And I think our audience is definitely agreeing to this, that there is a much more need to do this. So yes, of course, thank you. I'm going to now just move to the next, lack of the conversation here, that what are some of the barriers, and we've been talking about it, that, if you could just highlight a few of them at the onset, that what are going to be some of those barriers and policy gaps, if I would say, that are still there in ensuring the participation of women in the economy across the world, and how should we respond to them? So maybe we can just go like one after the other. Maybe Aishwarya, you can take it first, and then I can come to Jaya.
Sure. I think one of the biggest challenges we face are systems that encourage stereotype traits for success, that leaders are a certain way, that you can succeed if you are a certain way at work. And that comes at a cost to women and really any diverse person who must shoulder that additional behavioral work to navigate this. And it also comes at a cost to companies because they lose many talented people who feel that they're stuck along the way, that they cannot move with these defined traits that are meant to make them successful. So identifying these biases and barriers proactively and curating policies and putting structures in place that address them can make a world of difference, right? And here it's very important, like I said, to not just talk about diversity, which means I bring in X number of people from an underrepresented section of the society. That's just not enough. You have to put practices and policies in place that level the playing field for people once they come in. You cannot then set out to make this diverse set of people just like the other set of people. Then you're losing the entire purpose of why you're bringing them in the first place. So you have to give them that room to operate in a way that's their zone, that where they bring out the best in themselves, which is where I do believe that inclusion and diversity is what we need to talk about much more than just diversity itself. From my experience at working with multiple groups here at Flipkart, I think there are 3 tenets that we really let guide us when we talk about I&D. And the first one, which is most important, is that you have to treat I&D as business critical and not just as a compliance necessary mechanism. You have to recognize that this is essential for you as a business. And you have to definitely move beyond diversity to diversity and inclusion. What have you done to make the diverse people contribute in their diverse ways to your organization? And the third is you have to embed I&D into all talent practices and drive accountability and not just track these metrics. These are some of the things that we have taken effort to put into our policy to make sure that leaders across the board are buying into this mentality and not just using it as a tick mark to bring in different people into the company. I think these will go a long way in bridging that gap.
Absolutely, Aishwarya. That's very valid. And thank you so much for setting that out so openly, because I agree, we take cognizance of it, but how much do we act on it? And that's something that's still questionable. So thank you for that. Jaya, I'm coming to you now.
I want to add to what Aishwarya said and also talk about conscious bias and unconscious bias.
Yes.
So some of the active interventions that we are talking about in terms of like governance, policies and principles, focused data approach, looking at diversity in terms of statistics and actually working and reporting on it, all of that are very important. It's also important that you have those support programs that keep women in the workplace. And if they're out for a period of time, how do you bring them back? So it is more about active intervention. It's more about watching the numbers. It's about governance principles. But that is not what I'm most worried about. What I'm most worried about, however, is the unconscious bias, which is what Aishwarya started with, which is more about stereotyping is one aspect of it. But where does the education stop? Do you need to act as a woman? Do you need to act like a man to prove that you're worthy of the seat at the table? The answer is no. So how do you get rid of that unconscious bias? Is a larger topic, which needs a lot of, again, active intervention rather than just footnotes, which is something I don't see organizations actively doing. For instance, if you're assertive as a woman, you're considered often to be arrogant. You're not considered to, versus a man who's assertive is considered to be leadership material. This is something that's widely prevalent at all roles, at all stages, even directly taking it, even if you're at a board role. When you intervene, it's looked at as, full of yourself, arrogant, those kind of traits are known with assertive, which is against counterintuitive to a leadership kind of a trait. So I think that unconditional, unconscious bias, as I call it, is something that needs to be paired with active intervention and education. Because when it's unconscious, people are doing it not because they want it, because those are the role models that they've been governed with. So I think it's a lot more of this get rid of stereotyping kind of messages consistently coming in, a lot of videos with active intervention. And I think since it's part of ETHRWorld, I would say it's a lot of role that HR has to play in terms of direct influencing on unconscious bias and taking all steps to prevent it. I wouldn't negate like roles such as active intervention, like parental leave and all the types of leave support us, whether it's a man or a woman. If you need to take time off, you need to take time off.
Yeah.
So, and the parent is both a male and a female. So I think it's a lot of that I think needs to happen. But beyond active intervention, I would focus on getting rid of unconscious bias, because that's when the society at a core and corporate world at a core is going to reform. And we need that very strongly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a very powerful statement, I think. And pretty much the highlight that this change has to come from the core, and we need to get rid of this unconscious biasness. I mean, we've been talking about this in the AI spectrum. Why aren't we talking about for us? So I think that's a very powerful thought. Thank you so much. And yes, with this, I'm pretty much out of the time. I think it was a very interactive and a full of learnings conversation for us, for the audience today. But before I let the two of you go, I have a question, and it could be just like a one-liner answer, if that's great. In line with this year's International Women's Day campaign, our theme is on breaking biases. And who better than you two to tell us about it? So how will you exactly choose to hashtag break the bias? So maybe you can say that I choose to break the bias by, and then just something that really is very close to your heart.
Aishwarya, go first.
Well, I choose to break the bias by speaking up against it and not remain silent just to fit in.
Fabulous. Thank you, Aishwarya.
I choose to break the bias by active intervention. And when I see the bias is coming up, I would take steps against it. So active intervention.
Wow. That's amazing. I think these are two powerful women who are kind of committing to this, that they choose to break the biases with their own set of things. And that's really amazing. So thank you so much, Aishwarya, Jaya. I think this was a phenomenal conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and so did our audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Saumya.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. With this, keep an eye on all the other conversations that are coming together. There's much more for you all. So thank you so much once again, and have a wonderful day ahead. Bye-bye.